Hey guys, today we have Jason Ray. So Jason joined my program probably about 6 months ago. I can't remember the exact time. But Jason is one of those cases where his wife literally told him, I think, our marriage is 100% dead. I don't believe things can change ever again. And not only was the wife saying that, but your therapist at one point said that as well. This marriage is over. Jason, I think you need to move out. So let's take a step back for a bit. So before you joined the program, so I know there was a lot of things that happened to lead to the relationship degradation, but I want to focus on the moment before you joined the program, because that was when things were really bad. You joined the program because things were really, really bad at that point.
Sure.
How done was your partner? What was happening? What was she saying to you, et cetera? And what were you feeling?
Yeah. So at the point that I joined the program, we had been in disastrous straits for about 5.5 months. 5 months before that was the, I love you, but I'm not in love with you conversation. And I don't think there's anything we can do. And it's time to, end what we've got. And from her side, she was telling our counselor divorce is inevitable. She'd gotten a lawyer, the process was well underway. And I had made some immediate attempts to make some changes. I did my own research. I started reading books, listening to audio tapes, a bunch of things. And after 5 months, we had gotten to the point where she said, well, we could stay together as roommates as long as there is no intimacy, emotional or otherwise, no connection, no responsibilities. And on her birthday, which was early February, I gave her a birthday card. Not a super romantic one. I just wanted to recognize it. She liked it quite a bit. And then she triggered off and she said, our marriage is 100% dead. It's over. We have to deal with that. And if we can stay together as roommates, I'm okay with that. But if not, I'm okay with that. So at that point, I realized that all the work I had been doing up to that had helped, defer things a little bit, but it hadn't actually changed, any of the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And so that's when, I'd been seeing your videos on YouTube for about a month. Mm-hmm. I had caught them. I actually told Jason when I was being interviewed for the program, I don't remember which of the videos I saw of yours first, but the title was something like The 4 Things You Need to Do to Win Her Back. And you opened the video with, that's not how it works. You can't just do these things, which resonated with me a lot. A lot of the things you were saying touched on stuff I'd gotten from other sources, but not at the right level, and then went way deeper than that and showed how the whole thing fit together.
Yeah. So I want to just piece together the timeline for our audience here a bit too. So, and I'm going to let you kind of fill in the colors of the different parts of the timeline as well. So I think this whole thing started to degrade, really. You were talking to me about one of your child was born outside the hospital. And that was such a traumatic experience because your wife almost died and your child almost died as well.
That's right.
And your relationship then became strained after that. What's the strain, you think, at that point in time?
So there were several things. Obviously, my wife went through that horrifying experience. She blamed me for some of it. Some of that blame was probably misplaced, but it didn't matter because perception is reality. So that's what she perceived had happened. And in reality, my reactions to what was going on were bad. Like when she was mad at me, I would get mad at her. And when she wasn't doing things I thought she should have been doing, I would get annoyed that I was picking up the slack. And I was treating her in a way that was not good. And, I didn't think it was as disastrous as it was, obviously, but it was. And that went on for a long time. That's almost
and that was, so that was 20, you gave the 2010. Time 2010. What was that? 2010. So that was 2010. So the problem here has been way longer than 5 months. I think it started like 2010, but I think we can even say it started before 2010, because usually what happens is and sorry if I'm trying to read too much into your situation, right? With my relationship with all of my clients, there's always this tipping point event where there's this big fight or big event, big problem that happens. And that big problem reveals all the pent up things, all the negative baggage, all the negative confirmation bias that's been collected for so many years, God knows how long. Now, when that big event happens, and that's the moment when things break down, we often falsely think, oh, it broke down because of that birthing outside the hospital. But really, again, we go back to the death by 1,000 cuts. It's been breaking down for a long time. That's just what pushed over the edge. The relationship has been dying for a very long time. Yep. And so you have that moment where it pushed your relationship over the edge to the point where it strained it a lot. And then you said in 2014 to 2016, so 4 years after this, you started actually couples counseling, and you did that for 2-3-ish years.
Yep.
Tell me about that experience, because you said it went well, but didn't solve the underlying issues, the deeper underlying issues, and it went downhill again in 2018. Tell me your experience with that.
Yeah, so I had done some personal therapy before that. We had decided that if we were going to be able to find a way to repair our relationship, we needed to go into couples counseling. We searched all over the city for the best couples counselors that were available. We got a referral to the best one and got in there for 2.5 years. And it was very helpful in some ways. But, I guess from my perspective, everybody starts with a paradigm. They start with what is it that they're trying to do? What are they trying to solve? What are they trying to encourage? What are they trying to teach? And his model was that the real problem is communication. That if you can't communicate clearly, if you can't really understand what the other person is saying, if you're reacting to what the other person is saying, you're not going to be able to find a stable relationship. That everybody has issues, everybody has triggers. We just need to learn how to catch them faster and repair faster. So we went through that, and it was helpful, and we did learn a lot of skills, and our relationship did improve a lot. But of course, the issue is communication is important. But if your underlying paradigm of the world is wrong, if the way you see your partner is wrong, if the way that you feel about events is poor, it colors everything that happens. And then the communication only slows down the degradation. Like, it doesn't stop it, it doesn't reverse it.
Yeah. I like that analogy because I found the same issue when I was trying to seek counseling and therapy for my own issues. And we can talk deeper about this later, but people always say communication is the most important thing. You have like guys like Gottman, for example, saying, oh, stonewalling, like the 4 horsemen, whatever it is, that's the enemy. Yeah. But then we need to ask a deeper question, right? Which is like, well, why is communication an issue in the first place? Because you're a smart dude. You have a successful job. Your partner's a smart gal. Is it that you don't know how to communicate? I don't think so. I think you do know how to communicate. I think you do know what to communicate, but the underlying thing that's broken is a safety, right?
Right.
It's, I sometimes don't know what to communicate, how to communicate it, because I don't feel safe to express it. And I don't feel safe to listen to people's ideas as well. So safety is really, to me, like a pipe. When safety is created, the pipe is clear. Information flows. When there's no safety, that pipe gets blocked. And when you tell someone, you need to learn how to communicate better without safety, that's like you taking a clogged pipe and going, you need to learn how to push more water in there. Well, it's like, yeah, I can do that for a while, but at some point it's like, dude, this is exhausting. I can't do that anymore. Yep. But you can even go deeper to say, well, why don't you have safety? Which leads to the communication problems is, like you said, the paradigm shifts, the internal shifts is maybe you have wrong paradigms about communication, about how you see your partner. Maybe how you see your partner is in a very victim mindset, in a very fundamental attribution error. You see resistance in the wrong way. And so when you get resistance, when you get problems, you panic instantly. If you are in this not good emotional state, you cannot respond well anymore. And so what you're saying is like, we need to get to the root of that. We can't just stay in the surface level and just say, oh, communicate harder, do better. But we'll talk more about that in a bit.
Yeah.
So that's 2014 to 2016. 2018, it went downhill again. So beginning of 2020, your wife said she thought we might not be able to stay married again, right? So right. It's like, okay, it's been getting worse for 2 years now, from 2018 to 2020. We got to do something. And so that was when you resumed counseling again. Was it the same counselor or different counselor?
Different counselor.
Also, supposedly the best counselor.
Well, he's been very helpful for my individual historical challenges. He's been very helpful with that, right? Yeah. But you talk about this in the program as well, that most couples counselors and most counseling about couples comes from the position that both sides have some equal share of what needs to happen, that it takes two to tango, that you need to learn how to manage your emotions after they have occurred so that you cannot overreact to what's happening. Mm-hmm. And that's not right. Like you talk about the fact that it's not right. I can testify it is not right. Because number one, perception is reality. Like whatever your partner perceives or you perceive about what's happening to you, that's real. So even if it's not true to the other person, it doesn't matter. And so all of the communication in the world won't help if the person receiving that communication is inferring from it what you really mean and what you're really doing. And then they react to their inference of it, but they never talk about that. And then everybody gets frustrated.
It's funny when people say that words two to tango, they often say it as like a good thing, meaning like they say like, oh yeah, we all work together towards improving ourselves so we can go and fix this ship that is the relationship. But most often what happens is we use this two to tango argument in a victim way, where we use it to say, well, I have problems, but you have problems too. And so a lot of couples, instead of fixing the relationship, they spend so much time defining what's whose fault, what's my fault, what's their fault. And they play this blame game. And you see this in the YouTube comments a lot. People do this all the time. It's like, well, my partner does this, my partner does that. It's like, you're missing the whole point then. You're wasting time, you're wasting your energy pinning whose blame it is. And you can never agree on whose blame it is, because again, like you said, it's subjective. Like I'm sure people have argued before where they try to like argue about what actually happened.
Right.
No, that's not what you said. That's not what you said. It's like, dude, you can never remember what you said. There's no video camera here. And even if you're right, it's not what you said, it's the interpretation of it. It's how they interpret it, right? That really matters. So even if you have the video, you can't just go, oh, that's what you said, but it's how you say it, the underlying implications behind it. Then you have to look at the context before that to say like, okay, well, you said this time, but this triggers me because of all these things that happened in the past as well. That all that stuff matters too. And so stop playing the blame game. But anyway, back to the story again. Yeah. So beginning of 2020, you started with another counseling session. And August 2021. So this was like probably a year and a half after the second wind of trying to get counseling. She said, I want this marriage to end. She privately, I think you said, got a lawyer. And this was the moment when the therapist also said, you know what, divorce seems pretty certain. Jason, you need to actually consider moving out. Tell me those details.
Yeah. So 2020, I started doing all this work. Things got better for a while, and then they started getting worse again. And then in August of 2020 is when she dropped the bomb and said that that's the end of this. I can't do this anymore. And she had told our therapist that I would have to. And my therapist had individually told me that that's something I was probably going to have to do, and I should prepare for that, and that sometimes people need their space, and that would be one way to get the space. Mm-hmm. I was obviously emotionally distraught. I lost 30 pounds in 2 weeks, and was in bed for a week and couldn't do anything. And then just started trying to get ready like trying to put myself in a position to be ready to do whatever we were going to do. We have 2 children. They're in a private school. Like there's a lot of logistics that would have to happen. And I wasn't in an emotional state to do anything about it. Neither was she. And she was fine as long as we kept every discussion on the absolute surface. Like as long as we were just talking about who's going to take the kids to school, it was fine. But the second we start anything suggested we were talking about anything deeper than that, she would go ballistic and get upset. And I'm sitting here trying not to upset anyone, including myself. And I'm just at a loss. Like I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I went through mindfulness training and I did that, which again is helpful as part of an actual situation that you're trying to get to. But as a technique on its own, it doesn't solve the problems that you're
Yeah. I akin it to like imagine you have a toolbox, right? And your job is to build this house. Yeah, someone can give you a hammer, but that alone, it helps. I can do some things, but I can't build a house with that. I need the full set. I need the complete set. Yeah. So I think also I would feel distraught here too, because it seems like for your case, you've been working on this relationship, on this problems for over a decade at this point. And so, I mean, it must have been terrible to think like all the things you learn, all the things you're doing for over a decade isn't actually moving the needle here.
Right. And that had been part of my bad reaction as well, is that over the whole course of time, it's like, well, if only this would happen, things would be better. If only that would happen, things would be better. And then I would do that, and then it wouldn't get better. And then it's like, well, how many iterations are we going to go through? Like, and I would be frustrated because I've done all this stuff and it isn't helping. Like it's not making things any better.
Yeah. Why did your wife, you think, give you so long?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. I think one thing, and you've said this in the program too, she really doesn't want to have this. Yeah, like her life is better if she's in a place where she's happy, where she has support, where she has a partner who cares, where the kids are happy, and that everything's being taken care of. So it's a problem for her to be on her own. It's a problem for her to be separated, and she doesn't hate me. Like I didn't like do something to her like physical abuse or something, which would be a show-stopping thing that could not be overcome. But she also was miserable, and she couldn't live in a miserable environment. And so for years, she had been, trying to put up with being miserable so that she could have the other things that she thought was important. And she'll tell you, she likes me. She's always liked me, but it's the way I was behaving and the effect it had on her and how it made her feel that was the problem.
Yeah. This brings up a very interesting thought in my head too, because like you said, I think our partner, they secretly want for you to grow, for you to improve, for this relationship to work. I mean, they chose you in the beginning, right? If they chose you, I mean, like people often say, oh, you never loved me anyway. When their partner wants to leave, it's like, are you kidding me right now? That's the best you can tell yourself. And what's funny also is, so as long as your partner, I think, has some semblance of belief that you can change, that there is a future, I think they'll stay. They'll stay very, very long if they have the semblance of belief. But once that belief goes away, either through the fact that so much time has passed and nothing is happening, that's one way. The second very common way is when the guy is so freaking clueless that the girl is just forget it. He'll never even realize this in a million years. I'm wasting my time.
No.
And so for your case,
and she's been telling him for a long time.
For a long time.
Heard it.
For your case, I think it's the first reason, which is like there's so much time has passed. I think she knows you want to change. You realize the problems, and you are trying to change, but you just can't. And at some point, she goes, "I don't want anymore." But I think for most people, if you find yourself in a position where your wife doesn't want to wait for you, like they just seem to like drop you on a dime like that, drop a 10-year marriage. And if you are thinking in your head, if you are thinking any semblance of, she never loved me, she never cared about me, she never gave a crap, she doesn't care anyway, she doesn't want me to succeed, the fact that you're thinking that should tell you that's the problem. Your head is so far up your own ass, right? That you cannot see that the problem is you are so oblivious to your issues, to your problems, that even when she wants to leave, you still think the problem is your partner. That's some serious issues. And it should be no mystery why your partner wants to leave if that's the case. That's interesting.
That's 100% victim mindset approach, right? That's the way people are. And again, it even if after 10 years your partner suddenly says, "Look, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore," it didn't start 9 years and 364 days ago. Like it's been a long, slow process.
Yeah.
And they just finally got to the point where they just can't do it anymore. Like
they can't do it anymore.
The end of their coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And they need to go. And also a lot of guys, a lot of people, but especially a lot of men, don't want to admit that it's their problem. Like even if not 100% of the problem is theirs, 90% of the problem is theirs. Like they have a lot to do, and they're not serious and committed to actually doing anything about it. Like they want to fix the overt issue. They want their partner to be okay. They want to stay together, but they don't actually want to change what they're doing. Like they don't want to change the way they see the world. They don't want to change the way they talk. They don't want to do any of that. And they have to, because that's growth. Like that's how.
I think so. So at this point, you started reading a bunch of books. Your partner's saying like, "I want a divorce." You were started reading a bunch of books, educated yourself. Then your wife kind of softened. She said, "You know what? Let's not move out yet." But no intimacy. So this is when you were talking about this platonic roommate.
And softening is not even the way to put it. It was more, as I now know, like now, because we talked, like now she's telling me this time. She thought that my behavior was going to make it impossible for us to stay, in the same zip code. Like the way I would respond and the way that would affect her and the kids, and it just wouldn't work. It wasn't that she thought I had to move out to get her space. She just thought that there was no possible way, like we could stay in the same space and it would be okay for either of us.
Okay.
And the 25 books that I read Gottman's, a couple of Gottman's books, and all this other stuff that I was doing, got her to the point of saying, well, it's probably possible. It's not impossible. We have to keep going down this road a while longer for it to be possible. But it's possible enough that it's worth letting this process continue a little longer rather than blowing everything up.
Got it. And so, January 2022, you found my videos.
Yeah.
And in February 2022, she said, "Our marriage is 100% dead. We will never be intimate friends. We need to figure something out." So that was when you joined the program. Then the week after that.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
that was February. Go ahead.
Thinking about it already, but that was the final straw for me.
So that's February 2022. That was when the last straw kind of hit for you. It's like, okay, I got to try something different. 4 months later now. Well, now it's September, so it's 5 months later.
Okay.
Tell me how things are like now.
Yeah, so now we are almost 3 months now into her saying, "I want to stay married. I want us to stay together." I don't know that romance will ever be something I can do again, but I'm not foreclosing that, right? But we should be lifetime partners, and we should stay together as a family. And I love you, and I want you to stay here. And then we bought a house, and then we moved. So and that was a lot of things started to happen as soon as she did.
Yeah. So I think June.
Yeah.
Did a therapy session. She's like, "Jason has changed dramatically." That was a big milestone. Wanted to stay married, build up a life partnership. And when did you buy? In July, you bought your forever house together.
That's right. That's right.
Your idea or her idea?
It was the event was forced on us, but it was both of our ideas.
Good.
So we were renting, and once she made this decision that she wanted to stay together, and she wanted to stay together as a family. Like the week after that, the landlord called, and we'd been in the house for 3 years, and the landlord said, "Hey, my mother's going to long-term care. I'm sorry, I have to sell the house that you're in. When your lease is up next March, you're going to have to leave. I can't renew your lease." And so we started looking, like in the market. The market's terrible. It's a bad time to buy a house. Better in July than it is now, but we started looking for what are our options.
Yeah.
And our children, our oldest just started high school, and she's in a specific magnet school in one school district, so we had to be in that school district for her. And so we were looking to see what was available. And this specific house just popped up out of nowhere, and it was ideal for us. Like it had all the things we wanted. My wife's a big gardener. She's a big craft person. She has a little craft business she's trying to get going. And the house has half an acre, which in the middle of the city is a lot of land. It's got all this gardening stuff, wired barn, 95% of what
she needs room for that. So it's a very niche house.
She wanted all this stuff. And some of my hobbies include woodworking and gunsmithing. And so I need a workshop, and this house has two-car garages, one on top of the other, and the lower one is a workshop. So it just worked out to be the ideal situation.
Yeah,
and people were right, and everything was right.
Good.
But it never would have, if it had come up the month before when she was still saying, this is, you're improving, but I don't know that this is ever going to get anywhere useful. There's no way like either of us would have wanted to commit to buying a house. Like that would have been insane.
Yeah, let's get separate apartments nearby. Yeah. And there's also a lot of firsts, I think, with things between you guys now. So one thing is she's actually very supportive of you being in the program now.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, tell me what she says. I want to see.
She gets annoyed if I don't spend time in the program.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, it's hard for me because I'm inside my own head. But for everyone outside, they see all of these dramatic differences from what they had experienced in the past. And and she's told me, first of all, things are way different. You have made enormous progress, and it's still going. When you are focused on the program you're working on and making that progress, you are continuing to grow super fast. And I want to see how far we can go. When you're not, you sort of go back to steady state. Like you're a better state now, but it's not advancing fast. And you start to get a little more frustrated about normal things. And I think you should focus on the program. And she's gone to rearrange her schedule to make sure I have time so that I can do some of the work. So,
yeah. But physical contact is back, hugging every day, a lot of intimacy, a lot of emotional intimacy, a lot of trust. I mean, thinking like best vacation that we had ever, best conversation that we had ever. You tell me a lot of that stuff. Yeah, awesome stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's been fantastic, and our conversations are wildly different. I mean, that was one of the big negative points, is that every time we had any discussion that was involving any level of intimacy, even if it was purely like emotional, how are you feeling? Are you really feeling bad? What's the problem? Anytime we get into really deep stuff, it was traumatic. Like it would end up becoming an argument, or it would end up becoming a huge difference of opinion, or it was not satisfying. Like it would make her feel worse, not better. So she didn't want to have those conversations.
I see. So I want to get into the key learning lessons.
Yeah.
But before I do, right? So we have this contrast view of like how it's pretty much your graph looks like this, right? Where it's like downhill for a long time, maybe a bit of like spikes here and there, but it's just like a decade of downhill.
Right.
And then what seems like within the last 6 months, it's just been, and it's catalyzed by your internal growth too. And does it feel real to you? Does it feel like it's going to be permanent? Does it feel like it's going to be lasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So one thing that is hard for a lot of people is that we all have the filters and paradigms we use to view the world. And when we find out there may be something wrong with them, it's very, very hard usually to change them, to understand that they need to be changed. Fortunately for me, when it's not too personal, when it's more overt, I can change them pretty fast because that was a skill that I built in school. So when I realized certain things were wrong, I was able to change those things pretty much instantly. One of the big stressors that we had was that I felt like since I was the one income in the family and she was taking care of the kids and doing her craft business, I always felt like I was doing more. Like I was doing a lot more because I was working all day long and then I'd get home and, she took the kids to school for a couple of hours and then she had the day to herself and it wasn't a fair exchange of labor, right? And that was a sore point for many years. Well, in February, right after I started the program, and we were talking about the fact that I was starting this program, I had this epiphany, thanks to one of the early things that I had seen, that I had been making this huge error, that I was measuring emotional labor in minutes, and minutes is not the right metric, right? So while I was putting in more minutes at my job and doing stuff around the house, she was putting out a ton more energy and a ton more effort for keeping the family together, keeping me stable, keeping herself stable, and I didn't recognize that and I didn't value that. And that was a huge error on my part. So that stopped like immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, that was a mistake. That said, the internal shifts that we go through in the program and that you focus on early, if you make those shifts, they will lock and you will have them. And then you have the practices to keep them up. And then they don't go away. Like they're not going to change. Yeah. The whole focus on untethering and on being process-oriented, not results-focused, that's a big shift to make. But once you've made it, it's very obvious, right? It's easy.
I want to talk about deeper into those things, but just to recap this whole section of the interview, I think people often find it hard to believe when people say like, oh, we've been struggling for 10 years and we fixed our relationship in 6 months. And their comments are always going to be sarcastic and they will say, oh, just would you wait? It'll become worse again, right? But the analogy that I have for that one is like this, okay? Imagine your success in your relationships is like guided, like missiles, okay? Either you hit a target or you don't. So you've been missing the target for 10 years now. And you went to therapy, you went to do whatever, and most professionals, most courses you do will teach you how to hit the target. They will, right? But eventually you get less calibrated and you start missing the target again. So people think like results are always temporary because it's always missing the target, and they will calibrate it for you, but they don't teach you how to calibrate it yourself.
Well, and using that analogy, you're absolutely right. And the big mistake there is people think the target is stationary. It's not.
That also is also
okay, and they can help you calibrate to hit the current target, right? But then it moves, and then you have to know how to predict its movement. You have to know how
it moves because people evolve. Problems come up. You change your job. Landlord calls, and you have to move now, and it presents problems. So target's always moving. But I love that analogy better because what we're trying to do here is basically teach you how to be a laser guided missile, where not only do we calibrate you, but we teach you how to, once you launch that missile and it's on the way to the target, we're like, we're teaching you how to weave. It's almost like a car again, like, right? How confident are you? Like once you learn how to drive, for example, you master driving, and someone says to you, well, good luck, you're about to crash. Like, no, because I'm steering the car. I know how to steer the car. If I see a car coming, I can move. And I think that's what you're referring to, which is like, you can see almost yourself driving your relationship in real time. And you can see the problems come up in real time. And you can know what levers you can pull to avoid those things in real time. And so when I asked you, do you feel confident that this will be a lasting result? Your answer was a definite yes, no hesitation, because you feel that you're guiding everything. You're guiding every step of the way.
And you started off by saying something that I think is true that people think it, and it's very wrong, is we had problems in our relationship for many, many, many years. And for 10 years, it was going downhill with bumps up and down. In 6 months, it hasn't been fixed. Like, it's not like our relationship is not fixed, and it will not be ever fixed to the point that I can check the box and say, oh, the relationship is now fixed. I can move on to the next thing. Like, again, that's not how it works. It's a constant process. And so you're going to see, we are going to see continued movement. It's going to continue to improve if I do my work. If I do the things that I need to do and I stay on it, things will continue to improve as far as they will improve. Like, who knows how far that is, but I'm confident that they will continue to improve. And I'm confident the skills I'm learning are applicable, and not just with the relationship. Like, my situation at work is very different than it was for many years. I've been at the same company for a long time. I'm an expert. I'm, highly paid professional. And yet people I'm meeting with, I just met with one of my colleagues last week who said, I don't know what you've been doing.
It's funny.
It's a completely different presentation. And I like it. Like, keep doing whatever you're doing. It's great. Keep doing it.
I love that. And I can double that down with an analogy too of the car again, right? I think a lot of people think of reconciliation as, let's say you're trying to go from point A to point B in a car, right? Most people think like, okay, I don't care what you do, but when we get to the destination, me and my partner together, when we get to point B, then we can enjoy ourselves. But what you're saying is that's not what reconciliation is. Reconciliation is not about getting to point B. Reconciliation is learning how to drive the car so you don't die while getting to point B. And so you can actually enjoy yourself while en route to point B.
Right. And then to point C after point B is
achieved. And then point C, then D, then E. Perfect, right? So the reconciliation is the learning of the process, the internal process to guide that relationship. And I think your partner will say the same too, in that, we always say people don't leave relationships because of the problems. People really leave relationships because of the catch-22 that's created from the lack of safety, right? So which is the first point. It's like, we often say the term, no situation is ever unique.
Right.
Because it's not all these hundreds of reasons why you think your relationship is breaking down, communication issues, parenting differences, goal differences, whatever it is, sexual issues. It's that you have all these problems, but you cannot talk about it. You have no safety to talk about it. And you have no safety to talk about it. It's a culture where I will lose if I share it because of whatever reasons, but I will lose also if I don't share it. That's pushes people over the edge.
That's right. That's right.
Reconciliation is when you get that back. So all these problems still exist. But when you both can feel like, we have now the pipelines to actually talk about it, to actually resolve it, that's when hope is restored. That's when people choose to come back together. I think your wife is feeling the same. It's like, I don't think we have problems, but Jason's definitely changed. He's definitely looking and thinking and saying and doing things very differently. And I like that. We're getting somewhere. So it's her in the car going, we haven't been at point B yet, but I freaking love the car ride right now.
Yeah. Well, I came up with a metaphor that my wife really liked, which I'll share, because I was trying to figure out how to describe this. So if you think about, our presentation to the world, ourselves, our view of self is like a house that's been built. And our parents laid some of the foundations, and then we built on it, and then we added on and we did stuff to it. Okay, so I had built this great house. Some of the parts of the foundation were not that stable, right? Because we all have issues from our past. And then I had been married once before for a very long time. I had a business startup that did not work out. So there was a lot of trauma as a result of that. So my house had a fire and there was a lot of damage. And what I did is I, slapped up some new drywall and painted it. Like, I didn't fix the things that were wrong. I just covered them over so that it would look bad. And so along comes my wife, and she says, "Oh, that's a really nice house. Like, I think I'd like to be in that house." And she moves in. But because of that underlying damage, every time something goes wrong, every time there's a windstorm or an earthquake or, whatever, heavy rain, something falls off and she gets hurt. And over a long period of time, she felt so unsafe being in that house. She just knew that she was going to get hurt. Like, it didn't matter which way she went. If she shared the information, if she said she wanted something to be changed or improved, either I would fight it, which would hurt her, or I would say I would do it and not do it, which would hurt her, or, I would try to do it and maybe I'd fix that thing, but then another part of the ceiling would fall on her. So
and it's funny because you say that because like she knows you will not react well, because the very fact that you patchworked your house in the first place was like, dude, this guy does not know how to confront his own issues.
Right. So she moves out. Now, in my case, she moved out to the guest house on the property while she was trying to decide what to do. Right. And so I realized there was a problem. I threw up construction barricades around the house. I started tearing down the stuff that needed to be torn down and fixed. And I started fixing. Now she's watching this and she goes, "Oh, he's actually fixing it. Like, I could see he's actually working on it. And, there are parts of that house that were really nice before, and what he's doing looks pretty good. So I want to stick around, to see how it comes out." And if she will move back in, which when we came up with this was just before June, when she said, "Hey, well, I'll stick together." She said, "Whether I move in again or not, like, maybe I'll have my own separate, wing of the house. We'll share parts of it." But enough change was happening. She could see it, and she could see that it was fundamental, that I was actually doing the work, that it wasn't just papering it over. Now, over time, it still has to be safe. I still need to build the thing right. I still need to learn the skills. She still needs to become comfortable in that space because she's got a history of it being very dangerous. So even though it's not dangerous anymore, and we're not having any new catastrophes, she always in the back of her mind is going to have some concern that there could be.
So let's talk about that comfort. And it leads into your point about like why the internal shifts matter a lot. And so going to your analogy again, the house analogy again, right? Well, how do you make your partner feel comfortable, feel safe back in the same house when you had, in your case, 10 years of bad experiences in that house? How do you do that, right? Then we talk about the paths of change here, which is what everyone goes through, which is that when your partner wants a divorce, wants to separate, when it gets to that point, usually what happens is they have given you so many chances. They have given you so many opportunities to change, to do things differently. They've waited long enough. But each time they trust you, each time they wait, each time they trust that you will change, you burn them. And you burn them by giving that false promise and not changing and not making things different. So understand that the paths of change is the moment when you say, "Hey, honey, I want to change. I want to become different." And your partner will not believe you on that. Right. In fact, the very fact that you said that will make her resist and will make her trust you even less. But we have to understand why that is. So the question is always like, "Jeff, can you teach me the shortcuts, the scripts, etc.?" Well, because the paths have changed, there are no scripts, there are no shortcuts. Because even if you say the perfect thing, which is, "I love you, and I have $1 million here for you, and it's in this suitcase right here, and it's yours, and I'm a different person. I'm never going to cheat on you. I'm never going to do anything bad to you. I'm never going to be angry again." You could say the perfect concoction of words and make all these promises. But because of the paths of change, she will never believe you.
Right. And continuing on this analogy and this theme, even for the people who believe that they actually have tried to address problems when they've been raised, because some people do try, right? I thought I was trying, but here's the problem. She would point out that there was a hole in one wall, and I would patch that hole in that wall, and that was it. And I wouldn't go check to see if there were any more holes. I wouldn't go do any of the other things that needed to be done. So she felt it was never going to end. Mm-hmm. And feeling unsafe after you've told someone and they've promised you they're going to fix things. And even if they fix some of them, then they let them go, or they get distracted, or something else goes wrong. You just don't feel the process is there. Like it's not going to continue to be okay. Even if it's okay for a moment, it's not going to be okay down the road. They have to believe the process is there, that you're going to keep looking for holes in the walls and patching them and fixing things before. You would, I was trying to remember one of the things that you said about perfect words, about there's no such thing as perfect words. One of the key things that my wife had as an issue was that she had to believe that I was making these changes for myself, that I was doing this for me. I was fixing my life for my own reasons, not just for her. Because if I'm doing it just for her, as soon as she comes back, I'll stop. Right? She had to believe I was going to really make a fundamental shift. One of the key conversations we had just before she said, "Hey, I want to stay married and stay together," I said to her exactly the same thing I had said to her like 10 times over the last year, using effectively exactly the same words about how I was doing this for myself and I was doing this. And she said, "That's the first time I actually believe that you're telling me what you really believe."
Yeah.
You used the words, but the energy was wrong. Like
exactly.
You didn't believe it, right?
And so the first point here is like internal shifts. Why do we say internal shifts matter a lot? And why do we say there's no such thing as shortcuts, no silver bullets, no scripts? Because you could say the perfect words with the wrong micro expressions, with the wrong tone, with the wrong genuineness, because you haven't made the internal shifts. It falls flat. Right. And I hate it. Okay. So one of the funniest comments I get is when people say like, "Jeff, I tried the script that you said on YouTube and it didn't work. Sucks." then this is my response always. Okay, imagine this. Imagine the most famous trainer you can hire tells you, "Hey, you got to go to the gym and you got to diet to lose weight." And you say 2 months later, "I tried going to the gym, I tried dieting, doesn't work, sucks." How absurd, ridiculous does that sound? Because the problem is not that the gym doesn't work or the diet doesn't work. It's not that you should stop doing those things. If you change the how.
Right.
And the how is the internal side of things. Right.
Well, and you use like the gym and dieting. These are great metaphors too, because just like them, even if you go to the gym every day, work out, and get really ripped, and you look great, if you don't keep going to the gym and you don't keep working out, you're not going to stay ripped. Right? You've got to have the process as part of the way you live,
exactly,
so that it stays going. And and the internals, I have not even gotten to the frameworks and the campaigns yet. Like I haven't even gotten to the point of actually learning those techniques, because I got this much progress out of the internal shifts because I had to do them first anyway. Like that was the need. Now, I understand fully that I will not be able to grow as far as I want to. I won't be able to climb the mountain as far as I want to if I don't learn those other skills, because I do need them. Mm-hmm. And I do need to learn how to be more flexible in how to, manage myself in those kinds of conversations, and to really do things that not only stop my wife feeling unsafe, but actively help her feel safe.
Yeah. Because I think human beings in general, are very good at looking at the internal state of people, right? I think as a world, society, we're so focused on the external manifestations of things. Like you look at, for example, confidence, right? The topic of confidence. You would see sometimes confidence being like, "Oh, if you want to be confident, move your body this way, put your arm like this, right? Dress like this. If you want to seem like a high value man, you should talk like this. You should pause more. You should do this." But all this stuff is BS, right? Because you could try moving in a certain way, but if you internally do not feel confident, then however you move, you're going to be very unconfident. The same way, you could learn to say certain ways, to do certain things, to look a certain way. I don't care. People can see right through that. What is your internal state, right?
We talk about this. Another one of my hobbies is I play poker. And this comes up a lot because people will act a certain way But the question is, are they acting that way because that's their natural way they're acting? Or are they acting that way because they're trying to get you to believe something? If they're acting to get you to believe something, you should believe the opposite of whatever they're trying to get you to believe. So if you present yourself to your partner as a caring, concerned, safety building person, but you're doing it in a way that says, I'm going to try to convince you that I'm a safety building person, then they're going to go, okay, that's bullshit.
That's bullshit.
Right? Because that is exactly the act. It tells them that what's really going on is you're putting on an act. Yeah. And that means your natural behavior isn't that thing.
And to close that point, we often say the only way you can break through the paradox of change is by doing things, by showing your partner that you have changed in ways where you cannot fake anymore.
Right.
You cannot fake that. And one of it is by changing your micros. And you change your micros not by changing the micros directly, but by changing the internal stuff, right? That's one way. So she knows you cannot fake your micros, micro expressions, microtones. But the other way is also by how you deal with curveballs, moments when you're exhausted, moments when you're tired, moments when you will naturally go back to your default reflexes. If you go back to your default reflexes and you can be your new self still, that's massive. But if you can do 100 things right, but it's that one moment when you go back to your default reflex, and that default reflex is no bueno, that's what she'll remember. And she'll go, I don't know. I don't know if I can trust this yet.
And you say this all the time too, that it doesn't matter what you say or what you do, or no matter how perfect it is, even if you're completely genuine, you're completely honest, you're absolutely 100% on. If that only happens when you had a day to prepare and you're on stage and you're presenting, it doesn't matter, because what will matter is tomorrow when you're not on stage, when something happens that is unexpected. Yeah. And that's how your reaction is going to get measured. Because she knows that if you put in enough energy, you can make it look any way you want. Like anyone can put on an act for a short period of time. Right.
Exactly. And the other thing that you cannot fake, the third factor, is time. Is anyone can be fake for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month. But tell me people who can be fake for like 6 months, which is why no matter how much I trust my employees, I put every one of them through like a 3 to 6 month probation period, because I know they can say whatever they want in the short term, but in 6 months they cannot fake it. And I'll know who they are in 6 months. And your partner's doing the same thing. I think she's testing you right now too. Okay, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, great. Let me see. I may need to see more. I don't know.
Well, yeah, all of these problems occurred over a long period of time. The downward slope is a long slope. The idea that you're going to change that in a month or even 6 months or a year is nonsense. It took 10 years to get this bad. It's going to take more than 3 months to get better. It's going to have to go for a lot longer before everybody is accepted that it's the new thing is the new regular thing. Yeah. Right? It's still new. It feels new.
Exactly. So I want to dive deeper into what internal shifts mean, because people are wondering that probably. One of it is what we call untethering.
Yep.
The other is bulletproof vest. And the other is a bigger topic of self-esteem. We won't talk about it here, but we dedicate a whole phase for that self-esteem part. You're not even there yet. That's in phase 4. That's a doozy. But untethering first.
Yeah.
I want to just set the stage for this one, right? Untethering is when, if you look at most people, their emotional state, their motivation, their feelings is very tethered to external factors, to their partner, for example. If your partner comes home angry, starts nagging on you, you get angry and nags on you. So she goes down, you go down with her. But it also is tied to circumstances, external circumstances. You see this in business a lot, right? If it's a week where you make a lot of money, you are so motivated, you are so happy. But it's a week you don't make a lot of money, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, right? You start to give up. And it's not just business, it's everywhere, right? If I ask you, how was your day? Your answer is always going to be, it's good or bad because of X, Y, Z outcomes.
It used to be.
It used to be, but not now. And if we ask the average Joe,
Yep.
how do you feel about your future? How do you feel about your relationship? Oh, I feel good or bad about it because of XYZ outcomes. But when you untether, that's not you not giving a crap about your relationship, about life anymore. That's when you tether yourself, untether from the outcome to the process. So if you ask an untethered person, how was your day? They will say it was great or bad because of XYZ process. Right. That's why you see athletes too. No matter if they win a game, they lose a game, they're going to show up to practice the next day with the same ferocity. Average Joe, they will fluctuate. So untethering is important in two facets here. One, we talk about patterns of change, how you need to be consistent and steadfast, even moments when you cannot fake. If you're tethered, you are going to swing wildly from day to day. Your performance is going to be good one day, bad the other day. Motivation is going to be high, bad. And your part of seeing that fluctuation is going to go, shit, this is not real. There's no way this is real. There's no way this is legitimate, right? So you can never break through the patterns of change if you do not untether. The second most important thing is you cannot be a leader if you cannot untether. Leaders never once go, if my employees suck, or if my employees get angry at me, I'll get angry at them back. Leaders never say that. Yeah. If they're lazy, I'm going to be lazy too. If they're taking a day off, I'm going to be taking a day off too. If they're working hard, I'm going to work. That's only when I work hard. No. Leaders do not follow, are not tethered. Other people tether themselves to the leader. The leader has to define what they want and other people will follow, kind of thing. Right? So if you're tethered, you're always going to be following other people. You're tethered to all these things. You're going to be like pulled in all different directions. You cannot set your own, what you want to do, your thoughts, your beliefs, etc.
That's right. That's right. And we use sports analogies a lot, which is great because if you think about, if you're a basketball player, you're shooting free throws. If you try to change the way you're shooting the free throw every single time you shoot a free throw based on whether or not you hit the basket the last time, you will never get good at it, right? You can't get good at it. You have to get the process right. And then the more right the process is, the more high percentage accuracy you're going to end up getting. It doesn't mean you always hit. But the really good players say, well, okay, did I follow my process correctly? If not, I'm going to go back to that. And if I did follow correctly and I missed, then I missed.
Yeah.
On we go. Right?
Exactly. But what you're tied to is, again, is the process, right? The process. And this is when it gets too complicated, I think, for the purpose of this interview. But we talk about the process of how to actually untether. And we talk about how our brains have been very wired towards looking at the outcome, right?
Yes.
Because for the longest time, as we evolved as humans, we've been hunting and gathering for the longest time. And being tethered as a hunter and gatherer is very good, right? Because you need to respond and react to your surroundings. So for example, right? If I am not a hunter and I'm not attuned to my external circumstance, to outcomes, to getting immediate outcomes, I don't think I will have the motivation to hunt. If I have no motivation to hunt, I won't hunt. If I don't hunt, I'm going to go hungry. So if you look at hunters, they're very reactive. They hunt for the short term. They get the meat, they eat, ravage it, finish it. Then the meat spoils. And then they go, oh, I'm hungry. Let's hunt again. Right? It's very short term like that. It's very reactive. But then we talked about also how in the modern world, you don't get rewarded from being reactive anymore, for being short term. You get rewarded for being farmers, right? Like if you look at going to the gym, for example, working out, if you only work out when you feel like it, if you only work out when you see that you're losing weight, if you want to work on a relationship only when it's good, when it's positive, if you work on your business only when things are shiny and good, then you will never get that business. You will never get that lost weight. You will never get that relationship, right? Because everything requires you to not be so outcome oriented, but be process oriented. This is why, again, athletes, they can stay motivated for decades on end. Business leaders, they can stay motivated for decades on end despite not having the outcome.
Yep. And the flip side is also true. If you're only motivated when things are bad, if you're only working on your relationship when there's a problem, then number one, you'll never be in a state where there are no problems, because the minute you get there, you stop working on it, then the problems reoccur. And your partner will never believe that the relationship will ever be at a place where there aren't going to be any problems, because clearly that's the only thing that motivates you to do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's untethering. Now, we won't go too deep into the methodology, but basically in the program, we try to rewire your brain. Your brain is just a simple wiring. Like it's stimuli, response, right? The stimuli right now is that you have external circumstances, you have your partner, and you have been trained to respond to be tethered to that. All we need to do is understand, be aware of how we can untether, how we're tethered, and reprogram that untethered state. And that's what we want.
That's right.
That's it. Now, second internal shift is what we call the bulletproof vest. And this is a big one for you too. Because you said to me, you've been investigating how to actually manage your emotions for a long time. And what did you try? Like,
God, I don't even know how many books I read now. We did mindfulness. I did a bunch of stuff on stress management, on anger management, on creative problem solving in stressful environments to learn how to manage your emotions so you don't lose control while you're handling. And it all was interesting, but it didn't solve anything and it didn't change anything fundamental. Because the emotions, as you say, the emotions come from the way you interpret what's happened. They don't come from what's happened. They come from the way you interpret what's happened.
Yeah.
And if you wait until they've already happened, you're already emotional. It's too late to stop them at that point. It's too late to manage them. Right?
Let me paint a picture for the audience here, right? So what we're saying basically is what we teach in a program, and I'm giving you like some secret recipe sauce here. So, let's look at this sequence: events, emotions, right? Something happened and you get an emotion. Most people think that like, oh, the events cause the emotion. No, there's an intermediary step here of what we call the interpretations. And it's not the event itself that causes the emotions, but the interpretations. And we know this to be true because if you put 100 people in the same room, looking at the exact same things, going through the exact same things, some people will be very happy. Some people will be angry, will be sad, will be hopeless. I mean, you're going to have like a gamut of different emotions. The different emotions, again, is not caused by the event, but the way each person interprets things. Right? Same thing. I could tell my partner, hey, you look very beautiful today. But if she thinks of that as he's just saying things to be fake, that positive event of her telling you, of you telling her she's beautiful becomes a negative emotional trigger, right? Because of how she interprets it.
Absolutely.
Now, the problem that we're saying with most people's approaches to emotional management, then, once we understand that, is they try to fix their emotion. So again, event, interpretation, emotion, they try to fix it after the emotions has formed, right?
Right.
At that point, it's too late. So some of the techniques, mindfulness, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, mindfulness helps you control in what way you're going to react to the fact that you just had an emotional response. Like it helps you not unconsciously react. It helps you consciously react, but it doesn't change the fact that you still have the response and that you're choosing how you're going to next act based on your interpretation.
Exactly.
So to your point, if you believe that your partner just said something to you because she's mean and she said something mean to you, and your response can be unconscious and you can be mean back, or your response can be conscious. You could say, yeah, you were mean, but I'm not going to let that affect me. Okay. But you still believe she was mean. See, that's the problem, right?
So I akin mindfulness, and it's a very helpful tool, and I teach it in my program, right?
Yep.
But it's a tool. It's a double-edged sword. It's like journaling, for example. When people say like, oh, if you want to be calmer, go journal. Go journal about your day. Well, if you have such like angry paradigms about the world, you hate the world, you're so angry at your parents, your spouse, whatever it is, guess what you're going to journal about?
The Unabomber journaled every day. Was not necessarily
exactly. So mindfulness journaling just amplifies that consciousness. But if that consciousness is not healthy, that's a problem. So we often get asked like, well, what determines our interpretations? It's our paradigms. These paradigms is what we need to fix right here. So in our program, what we say is there's a difference between a thriving mindset and a surviving mindset. A surviving mindset is when you use the old world methods of trying to stay calm, breathing techniques, mindfulness alone. You try to like have some mantras to yourself after your emotions is formed. So your partner says something that annoys you, you feel angry and you're like, oh, I'm gonna calm down. So you're surviving you're like keeping your crap in, right? It's like you're trying to survive. Thriving is different. Thriving is when we change our paradigms before the emotions is formed so that you get the same event, different paradigm that leads to automatically different interpretations, that leads to very different emotions. So the great example of this one is like with resistance, right? When our clients get resistance, we're like, I love that. They're happy. We smile. We're like, give me more resistance. For the average Joe, resistance is like, okay, I got to keep it together. I got to stay calm.
Resistance is you getting information. That's how you get the information.
Exactly.
But, you talk about the difference between thriving and surviving, and and how we have our paradigms affect the way we respond. George Carlin made a great joke about this. He said, did you ever notice that when you're driving down the freeway, everyone that drives slower than you is an idiot, but everyone that drives faster than you is a maniac?
Yeah.
Right. So it's absolutely true. And you used a word several times, interesting, as a response to getting some feedback. And I'm a Star Trek fan, so I'm using the word fascinating, internally. But it's the same thing. It's saying, wait a minute, something just happened. Let's take a look at that. Rather than start responding emotionally to what just happened, it's like, oh, that's it. That's fascinating. Well, what caused that to happen? Where'd that come from?
Exactly. And I think the most vicious part of the surviving mindset, or the wrong ways of emotions management, is what we call the emotional flywheel. So let me give you an example here, right? If you see, let's say, resistance is a bad thing, one example, your partner's stonewalling you, your partner's gaslighting you, and you interpret that as they're fucking abusive, they're narcissistic, something is wrong with them, screw them. That's your thinking. So event is stonewalling. The interpretation is like something is wrong with your partner. I'm angry at them. The feelings is I'm angry at them, right? When you feel angry, not only does it lead you to do things that are not healthy, that perpetuates a cycle, but when you already feel angry here, your interpretation is going to be more angry. It's almost like trying to stop someone depressed from being depressed. Have you tried, like, someone's so depressed, so sad, no matter what you say, it'll make them sadder. It's like, look at the sun is so bright today. Oh, they twist it to make it even sadder.
And your reaction all comes out in the microtones and expression. So if you, if you get angry because of something that just happened, even if you're saying kind, gentle, supportive words, if you're saying them and communicating, but I'm pissed off about it, then it's the pissed off that comes across.
Exactly.
Not the trying to be helpful.
Exactly. So I want to touch on also like this, the fact that a lot of people, they always feel like their bad emotions are justified. Right? Because of this flywheel again. So if someone feels angry for their partner wanting to leave, for their partner cheating, for whatever it is, and I tell them, dude, you shouldn't feel angry about that, they'll think I'm fucking batshit crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Because they don't understand, like, the reason why you think your situation or the reason why you get angry in the first place is because of all these program paradigms. And so when I tell you you shouldn't be angry, I'm also telling you your program paradigms are wrong. People get defensive on that.
Right.
But I think what you're saying too is like, you got to change, like you've been saying this whole time, it's like, you got to change your paradigms.
Right.
If you want to change your emotions, you want to change your actions, you got to change your paradigms. So the best advice I have for people is like this, right? Your outcome in life, what you get in life, are caused by your actions. And your actions are bred out of your emotions. And your emotions are bred out of your paradigms, your interpretations. So if you want to change this outcome, you got to change your actions. If you want to change your actions, you got to change your feelings. If you want to change your feelings, you got to change your interpretation. It all goes back to that, the paradigm level, right?
Right.
And the best advice I can give to people too is ask yourself, do you have the life that you want today? If no, remember, you cannot solve your problems with the same knowledge you used to create it. So if I give you advice, let's say on a YouTube video or on a comment, and you think I'm crazy and you don't want to listen to it, ask yourself, when you're resisting my ideas, is that you trying to hold on to the same knowledge, to the same paradigms, to the same thing that got you to your problems in the first place?
I made that mistake early on.
You made that mistake early on too.
Well, and as I said to Jason when I was joining the program, I felt after all of the years that I had spent with therapy and books and all this other stuff, I felt like I was trying to put together a picture, and I had all these pieces, and I had found how some of them fit together, but I didn't know how they all fit together, and it seemed like there were a bunch of pieces missing. And getting into the program and watching all the stuff that I watched before that from your videos, it was like you showed me the puzzle box top. This is what the picture's supposed to look like. And yeah, you got these pieces, but these are the pieces you don't know you're missing. And these are how the ones fit together.
Yeah.
And so if I was sitting here saying, I don't think these pieces fit together, it's because there's things missing I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Right. So I just need to say, no, they're going to fit togetger.
Yeah. I haven't turned over some of the puzzle pieces here. They're still gray on the gray side. Yeah. I want to talk about two more topics here. One is I want to talk about your experience in couples therapy and why you think that didn't work, the different reasons behind it. But also I want to talk about this notion of it doesn't take two to tango as well. Yeah. Kind of talk about the victim mindset too and why that's a havoc. But let's talk about couples therapy first, because obviously, couples therapy didn't work for me. Didn't work for you to the extent that you wanted to go. And right now, right, as we speak, I think you know this one. It really grinds my gears, this website. This freaking website, right? It's a bunch of therapists who basically say like, oh, Jeff is a fraud, Jeff is a fake, he doesn't know what he's talking about, etc. And part of what they say is like, they try to take a lot of my principles that I teach, like hypo anti-synth, and say like, oh, that's just some gimmicky thing. So let's cut to the chase here, right? What was different about this program versus therapy that made this work for you? Yeah. And why therapy didn't work for you? What was the key differences?
I'd say the most important difference is that all of the books and all the therapy and all the work that I had done was primarily focused on saying, this is what should be happening. Like, you should be doing this. And if you're not doing this, you need to figure out how to do this. Well, but the problem is I don't know how to figure out how to do that. That's why I have the problem. I needed to know the how of getting there. And because therapy is time-bound and very focused, it really doesn't lend itself well to practicing the things that you need to practice to gain the process knowledge that you need to gain to make the thing work the way it needs to work. So all the therapy started with what we wanted to get at the end. What's the picture of the end process? And then not how do we behave and how do we learn to behave in a way that the end process is a natural outcome.
I felt that too. I felt like there was a lot of, like, in life in general, right? If you look at a lot of coaches, a lot of even coaches too, yeah, they would tell you, you should be talking this way. You should be like, for example, for an athlete, right? You should be running this fast. You should be scoring this many points. You should be having this many assists in your game. You should be running this fast. I say, okay, how do I do it? I don't know, just do better. Just do better.
Yeah. Well, and our therapist, who was focused on communication, one of the key points that he made was when you're in this emotional flywheel cycle, the person who is being triggered, the person who has been triggered, is in the worst position to recognize that they've been triggered. It's the other person who can recognize it. So therefore, if someone else is triggered, you have to then try to figure out how to manage the fact that something bad just happened inside them. Okay, but you can't manage what happens inside them. You can control how you react to what's happening.
That's why you're in a therapy session in the first place.
That's right. And it didn't get into, well, why is that a triggering thing? Like, what is it that is causing you to feel that way?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is like, it doesn't teach you the methods of how. So, okay, you want to be more bulletproof, you want to have better communication, you want to create more safety, great. But how do you actually do that?
Right.
But when you went to this program, obviously you found the how, but what was different about how maybe the how was presented, how the how was taught to you, how you were able to kind of take in the how, practice it, make it part of your lifestyle, become a performer in a way? Like, what was the most valuable part for you?
Yeah, the most valuable for me was that I didn't get like a recipe. Like, it wasn't a cookbook that said, just do these 3 things and everything will be fine. You're teaching the principles for how to build a recipe. Like, how do you make these things happen? And so it also shows you how to practice the things, but it shows you how to figure out what to be practiced as well as how to practice it well. And that was a big difference because, again, you can't identify every situation. There's going to be a million different variations. And everybody's life is a little different, and everybody's relationship has a little bit different dynamics. So you can't just have a recipe that you follow. You have to learn how to do the thing yourself. And so what I got in the programs and the books was either a set of recipes, which I couldn't apply because they didn't work right, or a set of, this is how you learn how to cook, but I'm not going to teach you how to cook anything interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because like one of the things that this website review, like one of the problems they have with me was because I always say, you have to become your own doctor. You have to learn how to become your own doctor. You have to understand the paradigms, the methodology that I use, like Geoffrey, I use, right? So when I coach people, I have a system in my head of how I diagnose your problem and how I treat your problems. Here's what you need to do. But what you're saying is like, I don't just tell you what is the problem and what is your treatment. I teach you, no, here's how I think. I'll show you how I think, how I find my own diagnosis, how I find my own treatments, so you can do it on your own. And so I say like, you have to become your own doctor, and people don't like that sometimes. Because people say either that's impossible, that's not possible, right? That's unethical. What would you say now that you've been in the program? You're obviously your own doctor. You learn how to become your own doctor.
I would say people have a great tendency to want to be binary. It's either all one way or all the other way. The answers are, as you say, never on either end of the extreme. They're always somewhere in the middle. So it's for people who are listening to this or people who are looking at the program, learning to be your own doctor doesn't mean you're an expert at the beginning. That's why there's a coach. That's why there's a program, is you have to learn these things. You have to practice these things. And even Michael Jordan had a coach. Like, no matter how good you are, it's always good to have an external point of view to help point out things you may have forgotten, things you may have missed, point out some relationships between things that maybe you didn't realize how they were connected. But you can't rely on the coach to play the game for you. Like, you have to play the game. So it's both things. And I think that a lot of criticism is aimed at who's responsible for making this work. Like, if you're the coach and it's not working, it's your fault. It's like, no. But if I'm the player and I'm not working, if I'm getting coached badly, I'm not going to get much better. Like I got to find the right coach too. So
Yeah.
it's both things.
Yeah, both prongs is to be working in tandem, where you have to be a great student. Yes, you have to have a great coach too. And the great coach has to be teaching you the right thing so you can be a good coach on your own too, in a way, so you can grow faster.
Because when the clock is running out, you have to take the shot. The coach is not going to step in and take the shot for you.
All right, yeah. Or the analogy I have too is like, if let's say you spend 1 week, one day a week with your coach, right? And you don't know how to be your own coach, then yeah, you might be learning a lot of things in that one day, but what about the other 6 days? But what if you can make use of the other 6 days too, you know?
That's right. I have 105 hours a week when I'm interacting with people. I've been coaching for an hour a week.
Yeah.
So I get 1% of my time being coached, and the other 99%, I have to do it without the coach being there. So
exactly. And again, like to your point, in a relationship, you're going to be faced with infinite permutations of what could happen, what she could say, problems, etc. You can't just sit there and go like, therapist, what do I say?
Right.
You have to like be on the fly, and you have to be the performer. That's why we have this saying that says, don't practice until you can get something right. Practice it until you can't get it wrong. You got to do that. You got to learn how to do that. And that applies to not only how you execute stuff, but how you diagnose, how you come up with the treatment, how you strategically think through things. Right? You have to think in a very different way.
That's right.
I think the biggest also reason, if I look back, why couples counseling doesn't work for me, Jason, and you tell me if it's true or not for you, we can go back to this notion of the paradox of change again. And during our counseling sessions, we would always be talking, me and my partner. Communication flowed. And she feels good during the counseling session. But as soon as we went home, everything shut down again. And it's because when you do couples counseling, the safety gets created between you and your therapist. So your partner here is not feeling safe with you alone, but feeling safe only with you when the therapist is around.
Absolutely.
Right. So trust is really placed in the wrong place because they don't trust you. They trust you with the guidance of the therapist. But once the guidance of the therapist goes away, it goes away. Everything goes away too. Did you find the same phenomenon too?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And when you get to the point of people saying, let's not talk about that until we have our session later next week. Like, okay, well all right. Well, then you're in trouble. Because if you can't talk when your therapist isn't there, you're never going to have a thriving relationship because the therapist doesn't live with you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So let's look at this topic of it doesn't take two to tango. Because you used to believe this, obviously, it takes two to tango.
Oh, yeah. All the therapists told us that.
Why did you? Yeah. So like, besides the fact that therapists were telling you, people are telling you it's a commonly accepted idea, why did you believe it?
Well, I believed it because the relationship is between more than one person. The relationship is between two people. So there's 2 points of view, there's 2 different personalities, there's 2 different life experiences. So in order to make a relationship work, both sides have to be working, right? Because it's there are 2 people in it, which turns out not to be true, but I didn't know that. Like I always believed that was true. And that a lot of the material and therapists and so on will come to disagreements between people from the assumption that both sides are equally valid and both sides have, a good part of the process, 50% either way, like that's the way it's going to be. But that's just not the way A, it is, and B, it's not the way you're going to fix it, even if it was that way. Because even if your partner had 50% of the problems and you had 50% of the problems, who's reacting, who's managing, who's leading is the question. And it doesn't take 2 people to lead, only one person has to lead. So if you have this cycle where you're going in a negative direction, and you talk about this, you can change the cycle, but to change the cycle only takes one person. You only have to have one person stop the cycle of response in order for it to stop being a cycle of response, because then your partner can still be mad at you. They can be mad as hell, and they can be telling you all kinds of hard truths and terrible things and all of the ways in which you were bad to them. Okay, that's all true, and they can say that, and that's fine. It doesn't mean it has to change what you're going to do. And I think that was the big thing for me on the It Takes Two to Tango. At the end of the day, how does any of this change what I am going to do next? What do I have to do? Yeah. And the answer is it doesn't change anything about what I have to do. So therefore, let me focus on what I have to do. And by the way, if you are taking care of your own stuff, other people will start taking care of their own stuff, or it will disappear, or it will change because they'll see it differently.
I love that. This just jogs my thoughts to some things I said in the program too, which I forgot that I said. It's three analogies here. So we can look at the feedback loop that you're talking about in either a short-term and long-term way. Short-term way. I think people need to understand that what you do is already affecting what your partner does in a big way. Let's say your partner comes home angry, you get angry back. Well, you getting angry back makes your partner even angrier, etc. So whether you know it or not, the saying, what you do affects everything else, is already true. Right now, it's just going in a more negative direction because you're not even aware of your impacts on your partner, for example. But if you see your partner behaving really badly, I mean, imagine, right? If one instance of this, your partner being angry or not being the best, makes you upset, which makes her even more upset, and you can see this happening, making your partner really upset in the short term, you can see how in the long term, it can really wreak havoc here.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that is also true is that our lives have a duration. So what we associate today with what's happening today is making people the poster children of all the things that have happened in the past. There have been events that have occurred that we layer on top of. So if your partner comes home and she's had a terrible day and people were yelling at her at work and she's feeling really bad and she comes in and she emotes that she's had a terrible day and she's upset. And you respond in a way that drives the cycle down. You respond in a negative way. She is now transferring all of that negative energy that she brought in the door to you. You're the one who's the cause of it now because you're the one feeding it. And as it feeds and she gets more and more upset, she forgets the fact that it started with her having a bad day outside the house. Where it ended was you are making her crazy because that is actually what's happening, is you are making her crazy.
Exactly. So you have this case too of misattribution or the wrong attribution, right? Where even in the short term, sometimes we find ourselves in a position where like, I don't know how we even fought. I don't know how we even got here. How do we even get this mad? You think that in the short term, within like context of a couple of hours, but you multiply this by like, for your case, a decade.
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to say, oh, my relationship right now is breaking down because of my partner being angry with me, being stupid and silly about the way she sees things. You could say that, right? Or you could say, let's be an investigator here. Let's look at the whole string of events, right? Okay, my partner is really, really upset right now, right? At me. And she's seeing me in all the wrong ways, interpreting my actions in all the wrong ways. Why is that? Could it be because I've destroyed safety for so many goddamn years? Could it be because I destroyed safety, I've piled up all these negative notches, negative baggages in her mind for so long, right? So then you realize when you look at it far back enough, everything falls back on you. It's like you didn't create the safety. You didn't create the environment. So the second premise that we have to understand here too, when we have to believe that, when we want to believe that it doesn't take two to tango, the second premise that we have to believe too is also environment versus character, right? Are people the way they are because of they're just assholes, or are people the way they are because of environmental factors, right? So let's look at the philosophy of this. Because what we're saying is it doesn't take two to tango because while you can't change your partner directly, you have very full control of how you set the environment, the culture of the relationship, and that culture will change her behavior eventually. And you felt this. Before she was very aloof, very like withdrawn, very angry a lot, resistant. Now she's none of those because you changed the culture, right?
Right.
But you still have a lot of people saying, for example, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I've tried everything. I've tried everything to change the culture. But my partner still would not communicate well, would not do this, would not do that. Well, to those people, I say, well, the reason why you think that is the reason why she doesn't want anything to do with your life. Because what you're saying there, what you're implying there is your partner is so fucked up that even though you change the culture to make it so easy for her, that she's still fucked up. If you think that about your partner, then is there any wonder why she's wanting to get the fuck out of here? You know what I mean?
And if she's so upset at the environment that was created in the past, that she's reacting that strongly now in the present, how long is it going to take to have a safe environment before she actually realizes that it's safe? It's going to take you can't just say, oh, last week I created a great environment. She didn't respond. It's
exactly.
like, well, you could go, and we do. It's now been almost 3 months since we decided to stay married. And twice over the last 3 months, something has happened where my wife was triggered and she went very negative. But it was how we handled it then, right? It's not that it's never going to happen. She's always going to have things happen that are going to cause her to react. It was, oh, now we can stop and talk about what just happened. Like, why did that just feel that way to you? What is it that's going on? And we were able to unwind it, right? And in both cases, after you get to the point of being able to talk about it because you've built enough safety that they can actually talk to you, then you start to unwind it and they go, oh, actually, my first husband made that mistake so many times that I got so angry about it. And then you made that mistake and I got even more angry because you were doing it to me too. And you just did something that reminded me of all that. But what you actually did wasn't that, and it wasn't actually connected. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
It felt that way, but it turns out it wasn't actually that way. But you've got to get to the point of being able to talk. You have to establish enough of an environment to talk first.
You do. So just to recap this thing, because I know it can sound pretty complicated because it's a batshit crazy principle for a lot of people. It doesn't take two to tango because you are in command of the feedback loop. What you do matters. What you do can either perpetuate a negative loop or break a negative loop and start a positive one. And you break that loop by trying to change the culture, right, of the relationship.
That's right.
And you change the culture by becoming the leader who can change the culture. And part of becoming that leader is you got to stop blame gaming. You got to stop looking at the other person. It's like this, right? It's like, imagine you have a CEO of a company and employees, okay? And an employee. And sure, it is right to say, it's true to say when something is broken, both the leader and both the employee had a fault in that. Sure, it's accurate, but it's not useful for the leader to go, well, the employee needs to be better then. No, a good leader will go, okay, sure, the employee can be better, but I can definitely be better. But I'm the leader. I'm not the employee. So I need to do my part in taking 100% responsibility for my 50%.
That's right.
If you just do that, you start a much more positive cycle.
If somebody's throwing super balls at you and you're slapping them back and the thing's bouncing back and forth and heterodyning, if you stop that, if they throw the ball at you and it hits your bulletproof vest and it falls to the floor and doesn't go anywhere, sooner or later, they're going to go, wait, the ball's not coming back. What's going on? It's not the first time, but eventually, right? And that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And that was the really part of the secret of making it better for us.
Yeah. Last thing I promise is I want to ask you about, you said you actually, you were a bit hesitant to actually join the program because of two things you said. One was the sales process. And the other was this disbelief that any program could ever be that detailed. Yeah. Because I promise really big things. I say to you, like, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to help you do this. I'm going to help you do that. What was your thinking at that point in time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the sales process is a good example of being triggered by relationships with past events. Right? So I'm interpreting what's happening based on past events. But the detail, again, I'm a researcher and I read a lot. And I'm used to going through a process or a program and getting a bunch of information and going, yeah, okay, but where's the rest of it? Like, how is this supposed to fit together? So for people who've gone through school, I'd say that almost every program book that I read about relationship management was at best a high school level course in dealing with it. They gave you the big concepts, and that was it.
Mm.
And I was expecting this program to be maybe a little better than that. It's actually more like a master's or PhD program in how to do this. It goes very deep in how to do the thing, but not in a way that drives people away, in my opinion, or is hard to follow. It's just that there's layers and layers and layers, and they build.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not getting just the surface, you're getting all of the underlying pieces. And that was quite a surprise. I mean, I didn't expect that. I was assuming I was going to have to do a whole bunch of work on my own to fill in all those gaps. And instead, what I found is actually there's so much information between the community and the Loom recordings from other people and from the program itself and from all this other stuff that it's actually more I need to focus on doing the practice. That's the thing I need to work on, yeah. not trying to figure out what's missing.
Yeah,
just do the stuff.
It's like when I say in the program, I say, drop everything else. Drop every book you've ever read. Forget everything you've ever known. This is all you need right here. I bet a lot of people are very skeptical. They say like, come on, that's just a marketing gimmick. That's just a marketing thing. You're just trying to, yeah.
And that's how people react. I mean, so the reaction for people, again, people listening to this, it's not that Geoffrey is saying everything that you learned before is completely wrong and you should throw it out. No, you learned a lot of good stuff. If you studied mindfulness before, that's a really good tool. If you there are a lot of really good bits of information in the world, and you probably have found some of them already. But that doesn't mean you should try to build your own way of doing this, because what you need to do is learn how to do the processes correctly. You need to learn how to reprogram. And you're not going to have learned that previously, because if you had, you wouldn't be here. So, so pay attention, do the process, put it in place, reiterate until it gets to the point that you can depend on it. And then if you still have questions, you can then go read the actual, other books that Geoffrey referenced, when he was doing his research. But do the program first.
Yeah. Because you had a comment in the Facebook group that said, like, you are not even going to understand why Jeff tells you to do something, but just do it.
Just do it.
And it will make sense later.
That's right.
What was that moment for you? Like, give me an example of that moment for you.
Well, that was a big mistake I made right early on. Was I thought I knew better because I'm smart, so I figured I could figure it out. So again, you're being for people who haven't seen it, you should go watch it, and for people who have seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. This was a Mr. Miyagi Karate Kid moment. Like you're doing wax on, wax off, and I'm going, why am I doing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it does make sense. You just don't know why it makes sense yet. But if you explained all the detail first of all, it'll take a very long time and be harder to understand. And second of all, you still need to build the muscle memory, or in our case, the mental muscle memory, to have these things repeat. And you don't build that memory without repetition. You've got to do the repetitions first. Yes. So, if it doesn't make sense, I guarantee to anyone who's listening, if something doesn't make sense to you, it's just because you haven't gotten that far yet. I guarantee it will make sense. And when it makes sense, you'll go, oh, that's why I was telling you to do that. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's almost like what I say too. It's all the information that we give is interconnected, right? So we had this problem in the program in the beginning of like, how do we order the materials? So the thinking was like, oh, let's order this first, then order this, for example. But then we realized, oh, crap. In order for them to know this super well, they need to know this. So we reversed the order. But then we found that it was the same problem. Oh, in order to know this, they need to know this. Then we realized, you know what? Screw this problem. Because the truth is, there are just some things that people will not know yet.
Right.
But they just have to trust me for a bit.
I had a personal experience separate from the program that perfectly illustrates this. I was in a class in college that was experimenting with a new way of teaching calculus. So for people who learn calculus, it goes in 3 years, 3 semesters worth of iteration. You do different things in each semester and it builds. But it's all new concepts. It's all very different from the math that you had before. So our school that year, they said, what we're going to do is we're going to teach all of it the first year. We're just going to do a little bit of each. And then the second year, we're going to do a little bit more of each. And the third year, we're going to do a little bit more of each. And so you'll keep iterating and it will make more sense. Everyone will be better. I am a good test taker. For the 2.5 hours in the final, I never spend more than 30 minutes taking a test. I always finish. In this class, at the end of the semester, I took the whole 2.5 hours. I didn't finish the test. I was in tears at the end. And of a possible 100 points, I scored 27. And I outscored the next person in the class by 18 points.
Oh my gosh.
It was a disaster. It was a disaster. And the problem was, they now know, is that when you're learning something that's really a different concept set, when it's a new set of concepts, you just can't learn them that fast. Like, you have to go through them in order and slowly to get them in place so that you can build on them. If you try to introduce all the concepts at the beginning, it just is confusing, and then nobody can get it. So, like, building the bulletproof vest depends on the processes we learn in Untethered. Like, that's part of the cycle. But if you try to start building a bulletproof vest first, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, you have to go through the steps. So, absolutely. Like,
it's good.
No matter what order you teach it in, there are going to be issues. And the way to solve those issues is for people to just focus on what's in front of them, practice, get it right, learn it, move on when you're comfortable, and eventually it will all make sense.
Yeah, which is why we had that initial first part of the program, which is like how to learn the program. It's a crucial part now. But
which everybody skips over. A lot of people skip over that.
Well, but the thing is this too, and I'll end on this point too. It's this, right? Most programs you take are not different. They're just a tiny permutation, tiny iteration, tiny incremental improvement on something already that already exists.
Right.
I'm sorry to say, like, I really struggle with this because I always ask myself, like, I had this insecure year where I was asking myself, why aren't people just wanting to get it? Why? Why is it so hard? Like, there's a few 20% who's like amazing at it. And when they're amazing at it, their life skyrockets. But this is 80% of people who are just like operating with a low standard. Why is that? And I always blame myself for it. Maybe I'm not teaching it right. Maybe I'm not like curriculuming this right. I'm not sure, right? But I think the problem is that most programs, even schools we go to, they're incrementally good, better. So like you said, they're not teaching something that's radically different.
Right.
So when you're not teaching radically different things, you can teach it however you want to teach it. And people will get it because there's already like an existing branch in their mind which they can latch on the new information to. But this is teaching someone where they've never even thought about this before. They've never even considered untethering, this way of building the bulletproof vest, this way of talking, this way of paradigms. And so when they absorb it, they're like, oh, I got this empty space. I got nothing to chain it to. And that's the problem. People think this program, they come in and they think this program is just an incrementally better version, but they don't realize just how radically different this is.
So here's a truism for everyone to remember. We've seen in our lives in the race of humanity's development, there have been many, many, many major breakthroughs. Breakthroughs never happen because of your iteration against the current solution to the problem. It's not incremental improvement. That's not how breakthroughs happen. Breakthroughs happen because somebody reconceptualizes the problem itself. It says the problem I'm solving is not the problem you think you're solving. It's a different problem. Mm. And the whole relationship dynamic, and we got to focus on communications, and it takes two to tango, and all of those things that we get in all these regular programs are missing the fundamental layer of building safety. They don't talk about it at all. And starting from there puts the whole process in a completely different perspective.
I love that. It's almost like that example of like, if you told someone back then, when they were like before cars, right? Well, what do you want from your transportation? Oh, I want a faster horse. Well, the fundamental thing is like, you're still thinking about horses here. You're going to be thinking about automobiles, right? You like, oh, we need better coolers. No, we need a refrigerator. We need to like completely change the game.
That's it.
And so, guys, let me just end on this. If you're applying for this program, get ready. Because I want this to be game changing. I don't want just to be some just like incrementally better program. Like I hate it when people say like, oh, it's just going to be like most other programs, but like a little bit better. I don't know what to say to you, right? No, you can forget that other program. This is it. And get ready for your mindset to be there. Empty your canvas, really humble yourself and really embrace learning in the new way, because learning revolutionary concepts is a very different experience than learning incrementally better concepts. Just iterations of something, just like what Jason was saying. But anyway, guys, if you want to explore what Jason is talking about here, I know we went to very deep topics. It got very deep, very messy sometimes, but that's just goes to show you just how deep we go in the program and how we equip you with like different ways of thinking through things. So you can think in this very complex level without making it feel like it's complex. So if you want to apply for the program, if you want to learn more about the program, if you want to apply for it, we have a masterclass that's about an hour and a half long. It's going to tell you what the program is like. It's going to tell you the system, but it's not going to go deep. Okay. The program itself is over 100 hours long, plus. But if you want to go check it out, we have a masterclass down below this video. I'll put the link down below. If you want to apply for the program too, at the end of the masterclass, we'll show you how to apply. Be sure you pay attention to the application process. We only have room for less than 7% of clients right now. So we're very selective. We have to be very selective. So sorry about that inconvenience, I guess. Jason, last minute advice. If you met someone, like let's pretend, okay? You are standing in front of someone who was in your shoes, who is living the life exactly how you were living it back then. Basically, like your old self. If you're standing in front of your old self, what would you say to them? One thing.
I would say, forget about trying to fix your relationship. Worry about transforming yourself into the best person that you can be, in the best leader of a relationship that you can be. And if you do, you'll get the relationships that you want and you'll get the life that you want. So focus on yourself and get ready to be transformed.
It's funny because like you say, this is influencing your work, influencing relationship with the kids, your wife, yourself. And we always say people don't have relationship problems. People have problems with the self that reflects in that relationship. Yep, you fix the self, you fix everything else.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anyway, stay to the end. Stay after we finish a bit because I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Jason, thanks so much for doing this. I know it's like an hour, 40 minutes now, 45. So, thank you. But yeah, guys, hope that was helpful for you guys. Every 2 weeks, we'll have a new one. So stay tuned. Record this. What was it again? Sorry.
Guy Kawasaki, the president of Garage Technology Ventures originally. Now he's a venture capitalist, big science guy. Anyway, he has this thing about the development of technology and about paradigms. He says, so one time there was an ice harvesting industry in the US. Guys in Minnesota would go out in the winter with saws and cut blocks of ice and they'd ship around the country. Their idea of innovation was a longer, sharper saw. Ice harvesters were put out of business by the invention of the ice factories. Ice factories could make ice anywhere, any time of the year, they delivered it. Ice factories were completely put out of business by the invention of the first refrigerator, the first PC, personal chiller.
Yeah, personal chiller.
If they'd been networked, it would have been ICE-DN. But he said, but you would think that the ice factory companies would have invested in making refrigerators. And they don't. They don't. T.J. Watson, founder of IBM, 1955, said to the board of directors, there is a worldwide market for perhaps 5 computers. Ken Olsen, founder of Digital Equipment Corporation, who put the mainframe business almost out of business with the invention of the mini computer, 1979, says there is no reason for a person to have a computer in their home. So over and over and over, we see that people are iterating against the current solution and they make one breakthrough and they don't realize there's going to be more to follow, and that you can't just keep working on the problem the way you're used to thinking about it if you're going to get a major difference.
But one thing that's interesting that I took away from that too is like each revolution will always have its doubters.
Yep.
Always. And I akin this to like, imagine you are a running coach for a running team that is breaking sub 10 seconds in a 100-meter dash, every single moment, every single time. And you transport yourself back to 1930, where no one was breaking 10-second barriers. Let's say you tough on a time machine, you went back and you say, hey, I found this revolutionary new way of training you so you can run sub 10. People in the 1930s would think you're batshit fucking crazy. They will laugh you out of the room, not knowing that was possible the whole time.
That's it. Robert Heinlein, the science fiction author, said there are 3 phases in the adoption of any new technology or idea. The first phase is that everyone, the normal people, everyone says it's impossible. Can't be done. You shouldn't even try to do it. That's stupid. Forget it. Phase 2 is everyone says it's possible, but it's so hard and it's so expensive and your odds of success are so low. You shouldn't try to do it. And phase 3 is I knew it was a good idea all the time.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that people who are having disastrous problems in their relationship are looking for an answer. They don't even know what the question is, right? They're looking for an answer to the wrong question, and that's why it's hard to find. Mm-hmm. And you make a comment in the YouTube videos that nobody seeks you out until things are desperate, and that's because they don't realize they should. Like they think everything's all right, so they're not going to change anything unless they think something is wrong. They have to believe something's wrong first.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like that chiller or that ice factory example, right? It's like no one's going to look for a fridge.
Right.
No one's going to look for a fridge.
And you should screen people at the beginning that if they come because they think they're fine and they want to figure out how to fix it with their problem partner, forget it. You're in the wrong place. Because 100%. You have to believe first that you have to be the one doing the work. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, 100%. We screen that out like 100%. Like if they say, like we ask the question, right? What is wrong with your relationship today? If they say, oh, I'm doing this. Yeah, come on. We'll take the call. If they say, my partner doesn't know how to do this. My partner doesn't know how to do that. Fuck it. Forget it. You need to suffer more so we can, you can figure it out for yourself. But yeah. Anyway, Jason.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.